My name is Sierra, and at 68 years old, I never expected to find myself homeless after hip surgery. I returned to my son Thomas's house, barely able to walk, only to discover my suitcase sitting on the porch next to a handwritten note. There are only 3 of us now. Find somewhere else to stay, it read in my daughter-in-law Jennifer's neat handwriting. The pain in my hip was nothing compared to the stabbing in my heart. Little did I know my biggest betrayal would lead to my greatest strength. If you've ever had family betray you when you needed them most, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe to hear what happened next. 5 years ago, I lost Harold, my husband of 42 years. We'd built a beautiful life together, raised our son Thomas, and I'd enjoyed a fulfilling 30-year career as an elementary school teacher. Harold's passing left a void in my life that seemed impossible to fill. In those early days of widowhood, Thomas was my rock. Thomas and I had always shared a special bond. When he was little, we had Saturday morning pancake breakfasts, where we'd create shapes and stories with the batter. As he grew older, our traditions evolved into weekend hiking trips and lengthy discussions about books we'd both read. I was so proud when he graduated college, the first in our family to do so. When Thomas met Jennifer 7 years ago, I was genuinely happy for him. She was bright, ambitious, and seemed to make my son happy. At their wedding, Jennifer hugged me tightly and whispered, "I've always wanted a mother figure in my life." Her own mother had passed when she was young, and I felt a special responsibility to welcome her into our family. Those early years of their marriage, Jennifer would call me for advice, or just to chat. We'd go shopping together and share recipes. I truly believed we had a special relationship. 2 years ago, my arthritis worsened significantly. Simple tasks became painful challenges. Climbing the stairs in my 2-story home became an exercise in endurance. After one particularly bad fall, Thomas and Jennifer suggested I sell my house and move in with them. "Mom, we have plenty of space," Thomas insisted. "And this way we can help you when you need it." Jennifer nodded enthusiastically. "Plus, Michael adores his grandma. He'd love having you around every day." Their home was beautiful, a 4-bedroom colonial in a quiet suburb. I'd be close to my friends and my church. Most importantly, I'd be with family. When I sold my house, I made a decision that seemed wise at the time. Thomas and Jennifer had mentioned some financial struggles with their mortgage payments, so I offered to contribute $175,000 from my house sale toward their mortgage. "This will be my investment in our shared home," I told them, over dinner the night I handed Thomas the check. "Since this will be my permanent home too." Thomas had tears in his eyes as he hugged me. "Mom, you'll always have a place with us. I promise." Jennifer squeezed my hand across the table. "We're family. This is what family does." There was no formal contract, no paperwork, just family promises around a dinner table. My attorney had suggested drawing up a legal agreement, but I dismissed the idea. This was my son, my family. The early days of living together were joyful. I made breakfast each morning before Thomas left for his accounting job. I spent my days with 4-year-old Michael, when he wasn't at preschool, reading him stories and teaching him simple card games just as I'd done with Thomas. Jennifer worked part-time as a real estate agent, and I had dinner waiting when she came home. I felt useful and loved. When I was first diagnosed with severe hip deterioration requiring replacement surgery, the family was supportive. Thomas researched the best orthopedic surgeons, and Jennifer helped me prepare a downstairs guest room for my recovery period, since climbing stairs would be impossible for weeks. But looking back, I see the subtle changes that began once the surgery was scheduled. Jennifer stopped sharing her daily activities with me. Our morning coffee chats dwindled, replaced by her hurried exits with barely a goodbye. When I asked about her day, her answers became clipped, distracted. "Just busy, Sierra. Really busy." She started calling me by my first name instead of Mom, which had been her habit for years. I noticed but didn't comment. "People get stressed," I told myself. "Having an in-law in your home isn't always easy." Thomas began working later hours, often not returning until after I'd gone to bed. "Big project," he'd explain with a tired smile when I'd see him on weekends. "Should wrap up soon?" I dismissed my growing unease. My son had always been a hard worker dedicated to providing for his family, and Jennifer was building her real estate career. These were normal pressures of adult life. As my surgery date approached, I remained optimistic. The doctor assured me that with proper physical therapy, I could regain most of my mobility. I'd be able to play with Michael again, to help around the house, to resume my role as the helpful mother-in-law and doting grandmother. Everything would return to normal once I recovered. How wrong I was. The first clear sign that something had changed came about 3 months before my scheduled surgery. I came home from a doctor's appointment to find Jennifer rearranging the furniture in the family room. "I think the space flows better this way," she explained, not meeting my eyes. The new arrangement eliminated the comfortable reading corner I'd created near the window. My small bookshelf had been moved to the basement, and my favorite chair was now awkwardly positioned behind the sofa. "Where would you like me to sit now?" I asked, trying to keep my tone light. Jennifer shrugged. "Anywhere. The sofa's more comfortable anyway." A week later, I noticed my framed family photos had been removed from the hallway wall, replaced by abstract prints Jennifer had bought at a local gallery. When I asked about my photos, she said they were safely boxed in the attic. "The design consultant I hired suggested a more cohesive look," she explained. "Don't worry, we can put some of your things in your bedroom." My bedroom, not your room in our home anymore. Around this time, I began overhearing arguments between Thomas and Jennifer late at night. Their voices would carry through the heating vent between our rooms. "We cannot keep doing this," Jennifer hissed one night. "The credit cards are maxed out." I know, Thomas responded, his voice tired. "But what do you want me to do?" "Figure it out, your mother." Their voices dropped too low for me to hear the rest, but the tone when Jennifer mentioned me sent a chill through my body. One afternoon while Michael napped, I accidentally picked up the house phone when it rang, not realizing Jennifer was already on her cell phone in the backyard. "It's just so hard having her here all the time," I heard Jennifer say to someone. "I feel like I'm living with a supervisor. And now with this surgery coming up, she'll be even more dependent. I didn't sign up to run a nursing home." I silently hung up the phone, my hands shaking. That evening, I tried to talk to Thomas about my concerns. "Honey, is everything okay? With the household finances, I mean. If you need more help, I still have some savings." Thomas looked startled, then quickly smiled. "Everything's fine, Mom. Just normal stuff. Jennifer gets stressed about money sometimes, but we're okay." "And is Jennifer okay with me being here? I get the feeling she might need more space." He put his arm around me. "Don't be silly. This is your home now. Jennifer's just busy with work. The real estate market is really competitive right now." I wanted to believe him. Needed to believe him. But I couldn't ignore how Jennifer had begun supervising my time with Michael, rarely leaving us alone together. When I'd offer to take him to the park, she'd suddenly decide the whole family should go. When I'd start teaching him a card game, she'd interrupt with a scheduled activity or appointment I hadn't heard about before. My personal items began disappearing or being moved. My knitting basket that had always sat next to the sofa was relocated to my bedroom closet. The special tea I liked vanished from the kitchen cabinet, and my shows were deleted from the family DVR. Small things, petty things, but a clear message was being sent. 6 weeks before my surgery, Jennifer brought up assisted living during dinner. "I was showing a property near that beautiful new senior community today," she said casually. "The amenities are amazing. Pool activities director, gourmet dining. And they have excellent care for people recovering from surgeries." "That sounds nice," I replied cautiously. "For people who need that level of care." "Well, I picked up some brochures, just to look at. They have a physical therapist on staff. After your surgery, that might be really convenient." Thomas stared at his plate, saying nothing. The next day, I found the glossy brochures on my bedside table. The page for pricing had been folded over with the most expensive options circled in red pen. When I tried to discuss the future with Thomas, his responses became increasingly vague. "Let's just get through the surgery first, Mom. Then we can figure everything out." His eyes slid away from mine when he spoke. My son, who had always looked me straight in the eye, couldn't meet my gaze anymore. My friend Barbara noticed the change in my demeanor during our weekly lunch. "You don't seem yourself, Sierra. What's going on in that house?" I tried to minimize my concerns. "Oh, you know how it is living with family. Sometimes there are adjustments." Barbara, never one to mince words, put down her fork. "I know exactly how at Island. My sister moved in with her daughter, and within 6 months they'd taken control of her bank accounts and pushed her into a facility. You need to be careful." "Thomas would never do that," I protested. "Maybe not intentionally," Barbara conceded. "But people get influenced by spouses. Money gets tight. Situations change." A week before my surgery, I brought up the recovery plan with Thomas and Jennifer. "The doctor says I'll need help with bathing and dressing for at least the first week," I explained. "And I won't be able to drive for nearly a month." "We'll figure it out," Thomas said vaguely. Jennifer didn't look up from her phone. "I have 3 house closings that week. I can't reschedule them." "I can help some mornings," Thomas offered. "And maybe we can hire someone for a few hours on other days." "With what money?" Jennifer snapped, then quickly softened her tone. "I mean, our insurance probably won't cover home health aides, and they're so expensive." I went to bed that night with a knot of anxiety in my stomach. Something had clearly shifted in my relationship with my son and daughter-in-law. But with my surgery looming, I pushed my concerns aside. I needed to focus on my health first. Everything else could be addressed during my recovery. I had no idea that by then it would be too late. The morning of my surgery arrived with a gray drizzle that matched my uneasy mood. Thomas drove me to the hospital, the car ride mostly silent except for his occasional reassurance. "Everything will be fine, Mom. The doctor said this is routine." At the hospital entrance, he pulled to the curb and put the car in park. "You're not coming in?" I asked, surprised. "I have a 9:30 client meeting I couldn't reschedule," he explained, not quite meeting my eyes. "But I'll come back this afternoon to check on you. Jennifer will bring you some things later." I stood in the rain watching his car disappear around the corner, an inexplicable sense of abandonment washing over me. The surgery itself went well, according to my doctor. I have only hazy memories of the recovery room, the anesthesia making everything foggy and distant. But I do remember waking fully in my hospital room, looking expectantly toward the door, waiting for Thomas or Jennifer to appear. They never did. Not that first day. "Your family coming soon?" asked the evening shift nurse as she checked my vital signs. "They must be tied up," I said, making excuses I didn't believe. "My son works, and my daughter-in-law has my grandson to look after." The nurse's expression remained professional, but her eyes held something that looked like pity. I called Thomas's cell phone 3 times that evening. Each call went to voicemail. Near midnight, I received a text message. "Sorry, crazy day. Jennifer had a showing emergency and I had to pick up Michael. We'll visit tomorrow. Rest well." But tomorrow brought only more excuses via text messages. An important client meeting. Michael running a fever. Car troubles. On the 3rd day after surgery, Jennifer finally appeared for a brief 15-minute visit. She seemed uncomfortable in the hospital room, standing rather than sitting, checking her watch repeatedly. "The house is chaos without you," she said, though her tone suggested this wasn't necessarily a bad thing. "Michael keeps asking when Grandma's coming home. The doctor says maybe day after tomorrow if my physical therapy goes well today," I told her. "Oh," Jennifer said, her expression faltering. "That soon? We haven't really prepared the downstairs room yet. Things have been so busy." She left shortly after, promising to figure something out before my discharge. The coldness of her visit left me more lonely than if she hadn't come at all. That afternoon I met Doris, my new roommate, after a room change. In her 70s and recovering from a fall, Doris had a forthright manner I found comforting. "No visitors yet?" she asked, noticing my empty room. "My family's busy," I explained weakly. Doris raised an eyebrow. "Too busy for hospital visits after major surgery. That doesn't sound right, honey." Over the next 2 days, Doris and I talked frequently. She shared her own story of moving in with her daughter after her husband died and how things had slowly deteriorated. They started treating me like an unwelcome guest rather than family, she said. When I broke my hip, my son-in-law suggested I go to a nursing home temporarily. That was 2 years ago. I never went back to their house. Her words sent ice through my veins. The parallels were too close for comfort. My physical pain was significant despite medication. The incision site throbbed, and any movement sent shooting pains down my leg. But the emotional pain was worse. The feeling of abandonment, of being suddenly unimportant to the people I loved most, cut deeper than any surgical incision. On the 4th day, an unexpected visitor arrived. Angela Martinez, a former teaching colleague I hadn't seen in years, brought flowers and a genuine smile. I heard from Barbara that you were here, she explained. Thought you might like some company. Her visit was like rain in a desert. We talked about old times, former students' retirement activities. But when she asked about my recovery plan, I found myself growing vague, unwilling to admit that I wasn't sure my family wanted me back. Angela's brow furrowed. Sierra, is everything okay at home? You seem worried. Just normal surgery concerns, I lied. Everything's fine. But Angela's visit prompted questions from the hospital social worker the next morning. A petite woman with kind eyes and direct questions, she sat beside my bed with a clipboard. Miss Thompson, we need to discuss your discharge plan. Your surgeon has approved release for tomorrow, but we need to ensure you have proper support at home. My son and daughter-in-law are preparing everything I said with forced confidence. We've tried calling the number you provided several times with no response, she said gently. Hospital policy requires confirmed support for patients after hip replacement. Panic fluttered in my chest. They're just busy. I'm sure everything's fine. The social worker's expression remained neutral. Would you like us to arrange home health visits? Or perhaps a short stay in a rehabilitation facility until you're more mobile? No, I said, firmly, pride overriding common sense. My family will be there. Please try calling again. This led to a conference call that afternoon with Thomas finally answering. I could hear the reluctance in his voice as he spoke with the social worker and doctor, but he confirmed that yes, they were prepared for my return home. Yes, someone would be available to help with my care. Yes, they understood the recovery protocols. Due to complications and support concerns, my hospital stay extended to 5 days instead of the planned 3. By the 5th day, I was simultaneously desperate to leave the sterile hospital environment and terrified of what awaited me at home. When discharge day finally arrived, no family member came to collect me. After waiting 3 hours past my discharge time, I finally called a taxi using the last of the cash in my wallet. The taxi driver, a grandfatherly man named Carl, helped me into the car with more gentleness than my own family had shown in weeks. Surgery, huh? He asked, noticing my walker and careful movements. Hip replacement, I confirmed. My wife had that last year. Tough recovery, but she's dancing again now. You'll get there. His kindness brought tears to my eyes. Thank you. I hope so. As we pulled into the driveway of what I still thought of as my home, Carl insisted on helping me out of the car and retrieving my walker from the trunk. You sure someone's home? He asked, glancing at the quiet house. I don't mind waiting to make sure you get in okay. I'm sure it's fine, I said, though uncertainty gnawed at me. Thank you for your help. I had no idea that his was the last kindness I would experience before my world completely fell apart. The first thing I noticed, as I slowly made my way up the front walk, was how quiet the house seemed. Both Thomas and Jennifer's cars were in the driveway, but no lights were visible through the front windows despite the overcast day. Using my walker, I inched painfully forward, each step sending jolts through my newly reconstructed hip. As I approached the covered porch, my heart nearly stopped. There, neatly arranged beside the front door, sat my large suitcase, 2 cardboard boxes labeled Sierra's Things in Jennifer's handwriting, and my knitting basket. Balanced atop the suitcase was a white envelope. With trembling fingers, I picked up the envelope and withdrew a single sheet of notepaper. The message, written in Jennifer's neat handwriting, was brief but devastating. There are only 3 of us now. Find somewhere else to stay. We need our space back. My legs nearly gave out. I leaned heavily on my walker, fighting waves of dizziness and nausea that had nothing to do with my surgical recovery. This couldn't be happening. Not after major surgery. Not after everything I'd contributed to this home. I reached for the doorbell, pressing it several times in succession. When no one answered, I knocked as loudly as my weakened state would allow. Still nothing, though. I was certain I saw a curtain move in the living room window. "Thomas," I called out, my voice breaking. "Jennifer, please, I need to sit down." Across the street, my neighbor Dorothy emerged from her house, concern evident on her face as she hurried over. "Sierra? Good Lord, what are you doing standing out here? Shouldn't you be resting after your surgery?" The simple kindness in her question broke the dam. Tears spilled down my cheeks as I wordlessly handed her Jennifer's note. Dorothy's face darkened as she read it. "This is unacceptable," she declared. "Absolutely unacceptable." She marched to the door and pounded on it with a force I couldn't muster. "Open this door right now. I know you're in there." After several moments of Dorothy's persistent knocking, the door finally opened. Jennifer stood in the entryway, her expression cold and defensive. "This isn't a good time," she began, but Dorothy cut her off. "Not a good time. This woman just had major surgery, and you've put her belongings out like garbage. What kind of people are you?" Jennifer's face hardened. "This is a family matter. We've made decisions about what's best for our household." "Jennifer, please," I said, fighting to maintain my composure. "I just need to rest. We can talk about whatever's wrong after I've had a chance to lie down." "That's not possible," Jennifer replied flatly. "We've made other arrangements." Behind her, Thomas appeared in the hallway, his expression a mixture of shame and resolve. He couldn't meet my eyes, staring instead at a point somewhere over my shoulder. "Mom, we think it's better if you stay somewhere else during your recovery. The house isn't really set up for it, and with Jennifer's work schedule and Michael's activities." "Where exactly am I supposed to go?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. From deeper in the house came the sound of running feet, and suddenly Michael appeared, pushing past his parents. "Grandma," he cried, genuine delight in his voice as he ran toward me. Jennifer quickly stepped forward, catching him by the shoulders. "Michael, go back to your room, please. Grandma can't play right now." "But I made her a card," he protested, waving a folded piece of construction paper. "For her OE leg." The sight of my grandson being physically restrained from greeting me was perhaps the most painful moment of all. Michael's confused expression as he looked between his mother's stern face and my tear-streaked "one will haunt me forever." "It's okay, sweetie," I managed to say. "Grandma will see you soon." "Actually," Jennifer said, her voice carrying a finality that chilled me, "we've arranged for you to go to Sunny Pines Rehabilitation Center. They have a bed available starting today." Thomas finally spoke directly to me. "We made the arrangements while you were in the hospital, Mom. It's a nice place, and they have round-the-clock care for people recovering from surgery." The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that for a moment I couldn't speak. They had planned this while I was under anesthesia, vulnerable, and trusting that my family would care for me. Dorothy's arm came around my shoulders. "This is disgraceful," she told them. "Absolutely disgraceful." "You don't understand our situation," Jennifer responded defensively. "Sierra will be better off with professional care." "I understand perfectly," Dorothy shot back. "And so will everyone else in the neighborhood when they hear about this." It was that threat of public exposure that finally got me through the door. Not out of concern for my well-being, but fear of neighborhood gossip, Jennifer reluctantly stepped aside. "Fine. You can come in for a bit while we sort this out. But the rehabilitation center is expecting you today." As I stepped over the threshold of what had been my home for 2 years, I had no idea that what awaited inside would reveal an even deeper betrayal than the one I'd just experienced on the doorstep. The atmosphere inside the house was suffocating with tension. Dorothy helped me to the living room sofa, while Jennifer stood by, arms crossed, clearly unhappy with my presence in what she now considered exclusively her home. "Would you like some water, Sierra?" Dorothy asked, glaring pointedly at Jennifer, who had offered nothing. "That would be wonderful," I replied. my throat dry from emotion and medication. As Dorothy headed to the kitchen, Jennifer launched into what sounded like a rehearsed speech. "We've given this a lot of thought, Sierra. The house simply isn't large enough for your recovery needs. You'll require special equipment, regular therapy sessions, assistance with personal care. We're not equipped to handle all that. The doctor said I'd only need significant help for the first week," I countered. "After that, I can manage most things with a walker." It's not just that, Jennifer continued. "Michael is at a critical developmental stage. Having a sick grandmother in the house could be traumatic for him." Thomas, who had been standing silently in the doorway, nodded weakly. "The timing just isn't good, Mom." "When would be a good time for me to need surgery?" I asked, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Should I have consulted your calendar first?" Jennifer's eyes narrowed. "That's exactly the attitude that makes this situation difficult. Your expectation that we should rearrange our lives around your needs." I stared at my son, searching for any sign of the compassionate man I'd raised. "Thomas, I put $175,000 into this house on the understanding that it would be my home too." "That was a gift," Jennifer interjected sharply. "Family helps family." "Yes," I agreed. "Family does help family, especially when they're recovering from major surgery." Dorothy returned with water and sat beside me, her presence providing moral support I desperately needed. "Where are my things?" I asked, noticing that the family photos I'd kept in my bedroom were gone from the side table. Thomas and Jennifer exchanged glances. "We needed to make some changes," Thomas said vaguely. "What changes?" "I'll show her," Jennifer said, with an exasperated sigh, clearly wanting to demonstrate the impossibility of my continued residence. With Dorothy's help, I followed Jennifer down the hallway to what had been my bedroom for the past 2 years. The door swung open to reveal a completely transformed space. My bed was gone, replaced by a sleek desk and computer setup. The walls, once adorned with my cherished photos, now featured Jennifer's real estate certificates and awards. A crafting table occupied the corner where my reading chair had been. "As you can see," Jennifer said with unconcealed satisfaction, "we've converted the space to a home office and crafting room. I need a dedicated workspace for my real estate business, and there's no other suitable space in the house." The room had been so thoroughly transformed that no trace of my existence remained. It must have taken days to complete such a conversion, meaning they had started while I was still in surgery. "Where are my things?" I asked, again my voice hollow. "In storage," Thomas replied vaguely. "We can get them when you're settled somewhere." As we stood in the hallway, I noticed the door to Thomas's home office was ajar. Inside, I glimpsed stacks of papers on his desk, many bearing the red past due stamps I recognized from my years managing household finances. "I need to use the bathroom," I said, a pretext, to move past the office. "Use the one in the hall," Jennifer directed. "The master bath is being renovated." "I'll help her," Dorothy said firmly, giving Jennifer no opportunity to object. As we passed the office, I deliberately stumbled slightly, using the desk for support. In that brief moment, I saw what the papers contained: credit card statements with alarming 5-figure balances, mortgage late notices, and a home equity loan application. In the bathroom, Dorothy helped me sit on the closed toilet lid. "Sierra, you can't stay here," she whispered. "These people are not acting in your best interest. Come home with me until we figure something out." "I need to understand what's happening first," I replied, my mind racing. Something isn't right. When we emerged, Thomas was alone in the hallway, Jennifer having gone to check on Michael. "Thomas, can we talk privately?" I asked. Mother to son. His discomfort was palpable, but he nodded, leading me to the kitchen. As we passed his office, I noticed the papers had been hastily gathered and hidden. "What's really going on here?" I asked once we were alone. "Is this about money?" "It's complicated, Mom," he hedged. "Are you in financial trouble? I saw the past due notices in your office." His face flushed. "You had no right to look at those." "I wasn't snooping, but I saw enough to know something's wrong." "Talk to me, Thomas. I'm still your mother." Before he could answer, Jennifer's voice came from the doorway behind us. "Thomas Michael needs help with his homework." We're talking, I said, not turning around. Thomas. Now. Jennifer's tone left no room for negotiation. As Thomas left, I heard Jennifer's whispered words to him. Remember what we discussed. Your mother's money is already spent. We need the house. The pieces suddenly clicked into place with sickening clarity. When Thomas returned to the kitchen, Jennifer at his side, I confronted them directly. What happened to my $175,000? The money I put into this house? Jennifer answered before Thomas could speak. That was a contribution to the family. A gift, not an investment. That's not how it was presented to me, I countered. I was told I was buying a permanent place in this home. Nothing is permanent, Jennifer replied coldly. Situations change. Needs change. What needs exactly? What's happened to the money I contributed? Thomas shifted uncomfortably. We had some unexpected expenses, like what I pressed. Jennifer's father needed help with medical bills, he began. That's private family business, Jennifer cut in sharply. I'm family too, I reminded her. Or at least I thought I was. Jennifer's facade finally cracked. You were never family to me, she snapped. You were a convenient source of cash when we needed it, and now you're an inconvenience we can't afford. Jennifer Thomas exclaimed, shocked by her candor. What? It's true. We used her money to pay off your gambling debts and my credit cards. There's nothing left. And now we need the space and can't have her running up expenses we can't afford. The truth, when it finally emerged, was breathtaking in its callousness. I'd been used plain and simple. My own son had participated in what amounted to financial elder abuse. I can't believe what I'm hearing, I said quietly. Thomas, is this true? His silence was answer enough. From the doorway came a small voice. Why is Grandma crying? Michael stood there clutching his homemade card, his eyes wide with confusion. Jennifer spun around. Michael, I told you to stay in your room. But Grandma's crying, he insisted, moving toward me. The sight of my grandson's innocent concern was both heartbreaking and clarifying. In that moment, I knew I could not let this betrayal stand, not just for my sake, but for his. What lessons would he learn watching his parents discard a family member when they were no longer financially useful? Jennifer scooped Michael up, physically removing him from the kitchen despite his protests. When she returned, her expression was granite. This discussion is over. You need to leave now. The rehabilitation center is expecting you, or you can go with your nosy neighbor. But if you're not gone in 30 minutes, I'll call the police and have you removed for trespassing. You can't evict someone without proper notice. Dorothy interjected from the dining room where she'd been tactfully waiting. That's not legal. Watch me, Jennifer replied. She has no lease, no written agreement. It's our house. I spent that night in the guest room, a space so thoroughly stripped of comfort it barely qualified as habitable. The mattress had been removed from the bed frame, leaving only a thin camping pad on the metal springs. No pillows, no proper blankets. As I lay there in pain, both physical and emotional, I cycled through waves of disbelief, devastation, and finally, as dawn broke, determination. I had given Thomas and Jennifer power over my living situation, my finances, and my sense of security. It was time to take that power back. I had no idea yet how I would do it, but I knew with absolute certainty that I would not let this betrayal be the end of my story. Somewhere within me, beneath the pain and exhaustion, a spark of righteous anger ignited. By morning, it had grown into a steady flame of resolve. The next morning, I waited until Thomas left for work, and Jennifer took Michael to preschool before I began making phone calls. Dorothy had slipped me her cell phone before reluctantly leaving the previous evening, extracting a promise that I would call if things escalated further. My first call was to Barbara, my most steadfast friend. Those miserable, conniving little snakes, she hissed after I explained the situation. Pack whatever you can carry, Sierra. You're coming to stay with me right now. I can't just leave, I told her. Not until I understand my legal position. They've taken my money, Barbara. Almost everything I had from selling my house. All the more reason to get out and get legal help, she insisted. My guest room is ready whenever you need it. With Barbara's unconditional support secured, I made my next call to senior legal aid, a free service I'd read about in a pamphlet at the hospital. The intake specialist listened carefully to my situation and connected me immediately with a volunteer attorney specializing in elder law. What you're describing could constitute elder financial abuse, the attorney, Mrs. Goldstein told me gravely. The verbal agreement about your financial contribution to the house made with the understanding of permanent residency may constitute a contractual obligation. Do you have any documentation of the money transfer? Just the canceled check and my bank statement, I replied. That's a start. And your name isn't on the property deed? I don't think so. It was their house before I moved in. Let's verify that first, she suggested. Sometimes when substantial money is contributed to a property, names are added to deeds even if the parties don't remember the details. That conversation led to my most important call to National Bank, where Thomas and Jennifer held their mortgage. This is Sierra Thompson. I began when connected to the mortgage department. I'm calling about the property at 47 Elmwood Drive. Yes, Mrs. Thompson, what can I help you with regarding your property? The representative responded. Your property. Those two words sent a jolt through me. I'm listed on the property, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause and keyboard clicking. Yes, according to our records, you were added as a joint tenant with right of survivorship approximately 2 years ago, when a substantial payment was made toward the principal. I nearly dropped the phone. Thomas had added me to the deed when I contributed the money but had never told me. Perhaps he'd forgotten, or perhaps he'd deliberately kept it from Jennifer. Either way, this changed everything. Thank you, I said. I'd like to make an appointment to discuss this mortgage further. The meeting with the bank manager later that day confirmed what I'd learned. I was indeed a legal co-owner of the house. The manager, a compassionate woman named Miss Jackson, was appalled by my situation. As a co-owner, they cannot legally evict you without a proper partition action through the courts, she explained. And given your financial contribution, you have a substantial equity interest in the property. Armed with this critical information, I met with Mrs. Goldstein from Legal Aid that afternoon. Barbara drove me to the appointment and waited in the lobby while I laid out everything I'd learned. This significantly strengthens your position, Mrs. Goldstein confirmed. Based on what you've told me, we can take the following actions. First, serve formal notice that you are exercising your rights as a property co-owner. Second, demand proper accounting of the funds you contributed. Third, if necessary, file for a partition action, ourselves forcing the sale of the property and division of proceeds according to ownership interest. I don't want to make my grandson homeless, I said, conflicted despite everything. Your son and daughter-in-law have options, Mrs. Goldstein assured me. They can buy out your interest at fair market value, or they can agree to a structured repayment of your contribution plus interest. What they cannot do is throw you out on the street after major surgery. Over the next 2 days, staying at Barbara's comfortable guest room, I gathered evidence and documentation. Doris, my hospital roommate, put me in touch with a support group for elder financial abuse survivors. From them, I learned the importance of meticulous record-keeping and maintaining a calm, factual approach when confronting abusers. The neighbors who had witnessed my shameful treatment on the porch offered written statements about what they'd seen and heard. Dorothy provided photos of my belongings stacked outside like garbage while I was barely able to walk. 1 week after my unceremonious ejection, I returned to the house accompanied by Barbara and Mrs. Goldstein. Jennifer answered the door, her expression shifting from annoyance to uncertainty at the sight of my legal representation. We need to speak with both you and Thomas, Mrs. Goldstein stated professionally. It concerns Mrs. Thompson's legal interest in this property. Thomas isn't home, Jennifer replied automatically. His car is in the driveway, Barbara pointed out. And I believe that's him in the kitchen. I can see him through the window. Cornered Jennifer reluctantly allowed us entry. In the living room, Thomas looked like a man attending his own execution, perched nervously on the edge of the sofa. Mrs. Goldstein laid out the facts with clinical precision. My name on the deed, my substantial equity interest, the illegal attempt at eviction. the potential civil and criminal penalties for elder financial abuse. With each point, Jennifer's face grew harder while Thomas seemed to physically shrink. "This is ridiculous," Jennifer finally sputtered. "We have a verbal agreement that the money was a gift." Mrs. Reynolds. Mrs. Goldstein addressed Jennifer calmly. "Verbal agreements carry less weight than written documentation. The deed listing Mrs. Goldstein, Thompson as joint tenant with right of survivorship constitutes stronger evidence of intent than your characterization of a conversation." Turning to both of them, I delivered my ultimatum. "You have two options. Either buy out my share of the house at fair market value, which the appraiser estimates is now $225,000 given the recent property value increases, or we force a sale through partition action and all face the disruption that would cause." "We don't have that kind of money," Jennifer exclaimed. "Then perhaps you shouldn't have spent my $175,000, I replied evenly. "You can take out a home equity loan or you can sell the house and find something more affordable. And in the meantime," Mrs. Goldstein added, "Mrs. Thompson has the legal right to occupy the property she co-owns. She will be returning today to the home during this resolution process." "You can't be serious," Jennifer protested. "Completely serious," I assured her. "I'll be staying in the guest room until this matter is resolved, as is my legal right." Thomas finally spoke, his voice barely audible. "Jennifer, she's right. I did put Mom's name on the deed when she gave us the money. It seemed like the right thing to do at the time." Jennifer turned on him, fury in her eyes. "You did what? And you never told me?" "I tried to tell you we couldn't just kick her out," he said defensively. "But you wouldn't listen." The facade of family unity cracked wide open, revealing the dysfunction beneath. As Jennifer and Thomas began arguing, Mrs. Goldstein quietly helped me establish myself in the guest room, this time with proper bedding and my essential belongings that Barbara had been storing. That evening, as I settled into the guest room of my legally co-owned home, I felt no triumph, only a sad resolution. The relationship with my son was damaged, perhaps irreparably, but I had stood up for myself, refused to be discarded when I became inconvenient. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but also, in its way, the most important. The next 3 months were among the most challenging of my life. Living under the same roof with Jennifer's barely concealed hostility required constant vigilance and emotional fortitude. Thomas oscillated between shame, resentment, and occasional attempts at reconciliation that always withered under Jennifer's disapproving glare. I maintained a dignified distance, focusing on my physical recovery and the legal process of resolving my financial stake in the house. Each day, I performed my physical therapy exercises in the privacy of the guest room, gradually regaining strength and mobility. The hip pain slowly subsided, replaced by a growing sense of independence. My world, which had contracted to the confines of Thomas and Jennifer's home, began to expand again. Barbara drove me to weekly support group meetings, where I met others who had experienced similar betrayals by family members. Their stories both broke my heart and strengthened my resolve. The hardest part shared one 80-year-old gentleman who had been financially exploited by his nephew, is accepting that the person you loved valued money more than your relationship. But once you accept that truth, you can start rebuilding on honest ground. Thomas made his first genuine attempt at conversation about 6 weeks into this uncomfortable arrangement. He found me drinking tea in the kitchen early one morning, before the others were awake. "Mom," he began hesitantly, "I want you to know I never intended things to end up this way." "Intentions matter less than actions, Thomas," I replied, not unkindly but firmly. "You watched your wife pack my belongings while I was in surgery. You stood by while I was put out on the porch like unwanted furniture." "Jennifer can be persuasive," he said, eyes downcast. "And we were in financial trouble. The gambling got out of hand, and then I was trying to cover those debts, and it just spiraled. You could have talked to me," I told him. "I would have helped if you'd been honest. What I can't forgive is the deception." He nodded, understanding, but not yet truly accepting responsibility. Jennifer, meanwhile, attempted several countermoves to undermine my position. She contacted Adult Protective Services claiming I was mentally incompetent and had donated the money willingly. The investigation quickly concluded in my favor with the caseworker, noting Jennifer's obvious financial motivations. She then tried to claim that my presence was causing psychological harm to Michael, but this backfired when the family counselor they consulted pointed out that abruptly separating a child from a beloved grandparent was more likely the source of his evident distress. Throughout this difficult period, Michael remained my one true joy in that household. Despite Jennifer's attempts to limit our interaction, he sought me out, bringing me drawings or asking for stories. Each of these moments was precious, a reminder of the pure love that exists before adult complications tarnish it. By the beginning of the third month, Thomas and Jennifer had secured a home equity loan to buy out my interest in the property. The final amount was $225,000, representing my original investment, plus the proportional increase in property value over the 2 years. The day the funds were transferred to my account, I felt no triumph, only relief that this chapter was closing. I had already secured a small but comfortable condominium in a senior-friendly community just 3 blocks from Barbara's home. The timing was perfect as I was now sufficiently recovered to live independently. My departure from Thomas and Jennifer's home was quiet and dignified. I had already moved most of my belongings to my new condo with Barbara's help. On my final morning there, I left handwritten notes for both Thomas and Michael. Jennifer, I addressed in person with simple civility. I wish things had been different, I told her. But I want to thank you for one thing: you forced me to stand up for myself when I might otherwise have continued to accept mistreatment. That's a valuable lesson at any age. Her only response was a tight nod, but the flicker in her eyes suggested my words had registered. What I didn't know then was that my departure would trigger further unraveling in their household. 2 weeks later, Barbara called with neighborhood news Thomas had moved out. Apparently in the process of arranging the home equity loan, he had discovered that Jennifer had inherited substantial money from her father the previous year. Money she had kept secret while spending my contribution on luxury purchases and hidden accounts. The betrayal works both ways, Barbara reported. Word is he's filed for separation and is questioning all sorts of financial decisions. I took no pleasure in this development, feeling only sadness for my grandson caught in the middle. Thomas arranged to bring Michael to visit me at my new home weekly, a tentative rebuilding of bridges I welcomed primarily for Michael's sake. My healing journey continued beyond the physical. With the encouragement of my support group, I began seeing a therapist specializing in family trauma. Through those sessions, I confronted painful truths about my relationship with Thomas, recognizing patterns of enabling that had begun long before this crisis. You wanted so badly to be needed that you overlooked the signs of exploitation, my therapist observed gently. That's not uncommon, especially after losing a spouse. The challenge now is finding your value beyond what you can provide to others. Those words sparked a profound shift in my self-perception. I began volunteering at a local literacy program teaching adults to read, tapping into my teaching background in a way that felt meaningful and appreciated. Through the senior center near my new home, I joined several social groups, gradually building a community of friends who valued me for myself, not for what I could give them. At 70, I was learning to prioritize genuine connection over self-sacrifice. 6 months after moving into my condo, I encountered Angela Martinez again at a community theater production. The former teaching colleague who had visited me in the hospital was now a widow herself, having lost her husband the previous year. Our shared experiences and professional background provided immediate common ground. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" she asked as the show ended. I've found the transition to solo living requires regular infusions of good conversation. That coffee date led to others and a friendship that gradually deepened into something more. At our age, romance develops differently, more thoughtfully perhaps, but with no less significance. 1 year after the surgery that had triggered such profound changes in my life, I hosted a small dinner party in my condo. Barbara was there with her husband, along with 3 friends from my support group, Angela, and, most surprisingly, Thomas and Michael. Thomas and I had established a cautious new relationship built on clearer boundaries and expectations. Jennifer remained distant, refusing all contact, which I had come to accept as her choice, and perhaps for the best. As we enjoyed dessert, Michael, now 5 and full of kindergarten wisdom, asked innocently, "Grandma, are you still sad about your broken hip?" The table quieted everyone, aware of the deeper implications of his question. "No, sweetheart," I answered truthfully. "My hip is all better now. And you know what? Sometimes when things break, they can heal even stronger than before." Later, after the guests had gone, and Angela was helping me wash dishes, she commented on that exchange. "That was a powerful metaphor, Sierra. The broken hip that led to a stronger life." It wasn't the outcome I would have chosen, I admitted, but it forced me to recognize my own value and stand up for it. That's a lesson worth learning at any age. As I reflect on this journey from betrayal to rebuilding, I've come to understand that family isn't always defined by blood or legal ties. True family consists of those who treat you with dignity and respect, who value your presence for more than what you can provide. The most important relationship I've rebuilt is the one with myself, recognizing my worth beyond my role as mother, grandmother, or provider. At 68, I'm finally learning that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary for healthy relationships. If there's one message I'd share from this experience, it's this. It's never too late to stand up for yourself, to redefine what you'll accept in relationships, to start again. The greatest gift from my darkest moment was the discovery of my own resilience and the capacity to build a life rich with genuine connections. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against someone you loved? How did it change your perspective on relationships and boundaries? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's never too late to start over. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most painful breaks lead to the strongest healing.